Welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Norman, your host. We're going to do a couple of shows on the Chicago Yacht Club's race to Mackinac, up Lake Michigan. This week, we get a chance to talk with Curtis Florence, a professional five-time world champion. He was on Abracadabra, and they're going to talk a little bit about the wreck. They also talked a little bit about the race from Port Huron to Mackinac, Bayview. And we're going to learn a little bit about what pro sailing is all about and kind of give a little bit of light on the subject, maybe learn something. We're also going to talk with a couple of the cruising skippers who were part of the Chicago Yacht Club's race this past week, and they're going to talk about the weather, lightning, 40, 50-mile-an-hour winds, and a record turn back of, I think, something just over 30 boats turned back not too far after the race started. So we're also going to bring you a second edition of the show, which will come up later in the week. We've got some really cool interviews lined up for that, but for now, we're going to get on with talking to Curtis. He's going to tell you all about being a pro racer. So stay tuned. We'll be back in a second. Welcome back. We're talking with Curtis Florence. And if you're not aware of who Curtis is a five-time world champion. And we're going to get into all the specifics. Curtis, you guys just came off the Port Huron to Mac and the Chicago to Mac. You had a little bit of difficulty in the Chicago race. So first of all, talk a little bit about the Port Huron race. And then we're going to get into talking about being a pro sailor and all that goes on, because you were a part of the Hooligan group, which was part of the Abracadabra group.
Former pro sailor.
Former pro sailor. And yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that, because I think I want to give people an understanding of really what it is. But you guys did you had some problems at the Chicago to Mac race. So talk about that first.
Okay. We went out the Friday before the race. We had a really good practice. We looked at some sails, and we knew there was a chance that it was going to be, fairly windy. So we went through some reefing stuff and just to really familiarize our stuff on the boat. And like I said, the team had a great practice. We got off the boat at the end of the day. We went and had an awesome dinner and woke up the next morning, get ready for the race. Which we did. We woke up to pretty windy conditions, went out to the start line, sailed by the pier, said hello to our friends and family that were there, and off to the start line we went. We had a game plan, and through that game plan, as the start, after the start and the race continued, our plan was coming together really well. We went up the Chicago shoreline, and we were looking at the storms that were coming out of the west, and we were like, okay, we're going to hook into one of these. This is going to be great. And the further and further we went up the coastline, we got a ton of separation from our fleet, who basically stayed drumline, and we were looking really good. And the systems came through, and again, our plan that we executed was coming together really well. And we hooked into one of these fronts, popped a kite, and away we went. And we were lighting it up pretty good. We were only, I think, 100 miles into the race. We were maybe 5-6 miles back of Heartbreaker. And we had Denali, who was maybe 2 or 3 miles in front of us. And so, to be 100 miles into the race and have those guys right there with you, we thought we were doing really good. obviously people have seen the videos of the lightning storms and the wind and everything that was going on. And unfortunately, we were sailing through the night and cruising downwind doing 17 knots. And we just heard a loud bang. And I was in the back of the boat at that time, and I noticed the backstay went really, really loose. And I was like, oh, that's not good. But it was a little confusing because all the sails were still up, and it was like, well, what's going on here, So of course, we got some lights up to the top of the rig, realized we snapped the crane off and, race over. Right. So in preparation though, from our practice and talking through on the rail of possible scenarios that could happen, the crew was very well prepared. We got the down boat, within reasonable amount of time. All the crew was safe, everybody was fine, and we started our motor to Muskegon. I think there's at the time, and when we hit the dock, we were pretty down and out because we realized how well we were doing, and but at the end of the day, again, obviously very glad nobody was hurt, and everybody was fine. And big picture, that's what's important at the end of the day. So
you were part of Don Tinschmidt's Abracadabra crew?
Yes, sir. Yep.
And are you guys doing, before we get into the specifics in your background, you guys doing harbor? You got
we were going to do harbor with the boat. That was the plan, to finish the Chicago Mac and then bring it down to harbor. We've done that now for the past, I think I've been involved for 4 or 5 years now. They really run a great program. Don Sr. is obviously a little older. Don Jr., very enthusiastic about sailing. And the goal was for father and son to win a Mac race. So unfortunately, with our mast failure, that's not going to happen with that boat. But we have a good friend who is going to loan us his Melges 24 for the weekend. And we're going to take a part of the crew and go up and go sailing. And at this point, it's I think it's just realizing that we're able to go sailing with some friends, have a good time, and still enjoy the moment.
Okay. Now you're based in Cleveland now, but you're a Kingsville, Ontario native. So you're Canadian.
Canadian, yep.
And I want to ask, before I get into the background, the Canadians have had a very good sail GP, both in Chicago and Bermuda with Fred Pye aboard and not aboard, but financing. Yeah. Does it, as a Canadian who's been a 5-time world champion, does it give your heart a little flutter and stand a little prouder because of the success they've had in the short term?
Well, it's first off, it's amazing what they're doing, to step into that class and have the success that they're having already. Obviously I'm a little older and I only know like a couple of people on the program, but it's great to see younger people coming up through the ranks, joining that platform of sailing and doing well, and the experience that they're gaining, and the things that they're learning now, they're going to have for a long time. And that's great to see, because not only are they involved in this GP, but they're going to be involved for a while. And that's great to see.
You started your, run, your 2004 Mum World Championships in Toronto. So you got a chance to win your first world championship at home. Swan 45 in 2007. And you've also won world championships on FAR 30, FAR 40, and Melges 24s. So you've had such a great run at that. 2009, your Rolex Sailor of the Year for Canada, which is their highest honor. So I want people to recognize just how good you are. I think that's important. Well, it's the follow-up to it, Curtis, is, Canada's had this great opportunity. Kingston is one of the communities that's putting in for hosting a Sail GP event like Chicago did. We had a chance last week to talk to Paul Kayard, and Paul talked a little bit about America losing its way on the national and on the global scene. And Canada has been sort of there, but not. Then all of a sudden you pop up with what's happening with SailGP. I think Canada and the United States share that sailing sort of lulls right now. That's a fair placement to stay. And it seems like it's coming back, and that's got to excite you as both a Canadian world champion and more importantly, just a world-class sailor.
You know, it's I don't want to say Canada has always kind of been like America's little brother, but when it comes to sailing in Canada, I mean, you know, we talked about how little press in the US sailing gets. Well, I think in Canada, it's even less, you know, so it's really hard for people to know, you know, what kind of sailing is going on in Canada, or what sailors are coming out of Canada and doing what they do. You know, I've been pretty lucky to sail with, you know, some of the, you know, best sailors in Canada at world championship events, you know, and nobody really looks at, you know, it's been said before, usually when you think about sailing, you know, when you look at the US, you're like, well, you're either from Annapolis or Newport or the West Coast, or, you know, on a higher level, you're either, you know, Australian or Kiwi or Italian, you know. But as far as Canadians, you know, it's never really thought of. We either play hockey or, you know,
right.
But no, it's great to see that you know, Canadians are taking a step forward, and you know, hopefully it's a new talent pool where people will look to get, you know, good sailors.
It's hard to see some of the national administrators of our sport say that there's not enough good Americans to be on the American boat for SailGP. We've got to hire, you know, an Aussie. It hurts the pride that you don't know that you can't have. There's just a lot of very Australian, New Zealand speaking guys on those boats, and I think that makes the folks around here angry, and we'll see where that goes. But let me take you back to 2009. Did you turn pro in 2009? Is that?
It was right after I believe I won the Rolex. I think my last year as an amateur sailor, I was sailing 200 plus days a year, and I was about to become a father again. And so I said to myself, well, even if I turn pro and I make, you know, sail half that much, you know, at least I'm making, you know, some money for it, or getting paid, and, you know, that way. So yeah. And I believe I had a couple. I never really wanted to turn pro, simply because as an amateur, I was doing a lot of sailing, and I knew if I turned pro, the sailing was going to cut back. But I almost wanted, I guess, I like a guaranteed job, you know, and I knew a lot of people, but I really didn't know like a lot of pro, like how to get into the pro game. And I learned a lot of lessons through that. What I learned is that I might have been at the top level of my amateur career, but the second that I turned pro, there was 100 guys who were better than me, you know, and so I had to really prove myself. And you know, it was a great learning lesson for sure.
We have kids that now want to be pro sailors. So take us through a little bit about what you need to do to get involved. What's the money involved? Can you make a living at being a pro sailor? And maybe give us some insight to what it is. If I'm 20 years old and I want to be a pro sailor, what do I got to do?
So I think starting off, 20 years old, that young, you basically have to be willing to do anything, you know. Pro sailors for me, when I was growing up, you know, a pro sailor on the boat would get off to the plane, go to the boat, do his job, you know, to the best of his ability, because obviously if he's a pro sailor, he's really good, you know, and after the event was over, would get on the plane and go home. You know, nowadays, I think, you know, as a 20-year-old, not only do you have to get on the boat and do your job well, but, you know, you need to, if it's a smaller boat, you need to get in the truck, tow the boat there, set it up, polish the bottom, do what you need to do, organize hotels or food or gear, or I think there's a lot more involved to being a pro sailor today than it is, you know, say 15, 20 years ago. and which is fine because it's all now becomes a part of the job. And I think it's easier for the owners to deal with because now there's less people involved where there's more responsibility on team members on the boat. So I think the program has changed a little bit. Obviously, not at the top level, like the guys in the 52 circuit aren't doing this, but I'm talking about, 20-year-olds who want to get into the program. They're going to start off, in the J70 fleet or, the 24 fleet where there's, more abundance of, I think probably more work for them there, and as they come up through the ranks in those classes, then they'll get recognized by bigger programs and be able to move on. So.
What can a guy make as a pro sailor today at the say the 52s and take it down to is it most guys are independent contractors? Is that a fair way to put it?
I would say so. Yeah. Yeah.
So if I'm an independent contractor, I'm on a 52. Am I making $500 a day, $200 a day, $1,000 a day? Just curious and ballpark. And I know it's a wide, variant, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how you call pro sailors independent contractors, because what ends up happening ultimately is, say, for example, you hire a top guy, to come race your boat, and he has people that he trusts, trimmers, whether it be bow guys, pit people, whatever. He's going to want to bring those people, onto the program with him because, let's face it, the longer you sail with people, the better you know them and stuff like that. It's just it's a whole little business or, little team within itself. But, as far as, wages go, I mean, I've heard of, day rates from, 500 to, 1,800, and I know, top pros, even make more beyond that. But obviously, if you demand money or expect a certain amount of money, that at that level, it better come with results.
I asked the question because we're involved in the lacrosse world, and PLL is the professional lacrosse league that goes around the country barnstorming. Yeah. And we have some involvement with them a little bit. And the best lacrosse goalie in the world is this summer going to make $45,000. That's what he's going to make. That's chump change to an NBA superstar who probably has that much money in his pocket for meals.
Yeah.
So my point is to give somebody an understanding is that if you're going to be a pro sailor, it comes with a difficult road. And it's, when I'll go back to Sail GP. When you go to that, there's the nine best skippers in the world. I don't think you have an argument. There'd be a whole lot. There may be 3 or 4 more guys that could fit into that group.
Yeah.
And they're all $1 million guys. But the reality to it is that there's only 9 of those jobs anyway in any sport.
And you got to remember too, that, pro sailing, it's a pretty tough world because it might sound like you're making a lot of money, but at the end of the day, if you have a family to support, healthcare benefits to pay, kids to put through school, I mean, let's face it. I mean, if you had to break down your everyday normal job into how much money you made per day, or do you know what I mean? Like, it's not easy, and it's ultimately at the end of the day, honestly, that's why I got, out of pro sailing, because I had the opportunity to get a job, and simply the pension plan and the health benefits was reason enough for me to do that. So
no, and the inside baseball is why we're asking these questions, because I think sailing is one of those sports that doesn't have great insight to the masses, because there's nobody really reporting on the kinds of things that are being talked about. If you're on the inside, that's fine, but that's a very small percentage. Yeah. And for a lot of these junior sailors and, that want to maybe make a career of these kinds of things, they really need to understand the parameters of what it takes. And it's like any other profession, you've got to learn your craft.
I think that's the nicest thing about our sport is we get to meet a lot of great people. And we get to go sailing on a lot of great boats, and, all it takes is, some money and some talent to put everything together. And, but it's just like every other sport, right? Mm-hmm. And also too, I think, our sport is also like a lot of other sports where, I think I don't quote me on these numbers, but I mean, how many kids in, America play, little league football, and how many actually make it to the NFL too. That's the, another thing to think about. Everybody says that, sailing through the collegiate level is really popular, really well, but as soon as they leave school, that's the end of their sailing career. But I think right now, there's a great example of the Melges 15 or the VX1s where these kids are coming out of school and they're able to afford these boats and still go sailing. My girlfriend made the joke of, well, not the joke, she made the thing of, hey, maybe we should get a Melges 15. And my comment was like, are you crazy? Do you know how many collegiate sailors are in that class? So
let me take you one other part. You are known as a world-class bowman. And so my question is, I mean, you have a reputation of being maybe one of the best in the world at that position. Is learning a boat like playing on an offense in football? If you're 6'5" and weigh 360 pounds, you're not going to be a wide receiver. You're going to be an offensive tackle, probably. So my question is, in boats, what is it? Do you think it's hereditary in certain spots? And what makes a good bowman?
I think for me personally, growing up as a bowman, I don't want to say I was self-taught, but, I think I learned a lot through my mistakes. But starting on the pointy end or doing bow when I was like 14, and never saying no to a ride, whether it was with good boats or bad boats, I always learned, and I'm still learning today. When I was younger, I was able to get through things a lot with physical strength. Now I get through things from knowledge, understanding how much time things take or how much time, things have to happen, is really good now. But things that make a good bowman are just
Agility, right?
Agility, time on the bow. Believe it or not, training. You talk about training. I think when I sailed on Barking Mad, we would spend a lot of time on time and distance on the start line. We would do that maybe, for an hour or 2 hours before every event. And, that really, helped, and again, at the end of the day, when you're lucky enough to have a coach, listen to your coach. We had Dave Scott coaching us one time. And again, on the far 40, he was like, maybe, you should start leaving, the spinnaker pole on the deck instead of on the mast, like we did her. And I was like, that's crazy. That's never going to work. It'll take too long, and sure enough, after watching the videos, it was amazing. There's a lot of times where I didn't believe coaches, and, until I saw it on a video camera with my own eyes, it was like, wow, that's, obviously the more time in, and I think the biggest thing for me was sailing with a bunch of different people, that way you're not always learning, the same mistakes over and over again,
Right.
So yeah.
If a quarterback is the most important position on a football field, especially certainly for the offense,
Yep.
who has to be the star on a boat? The skipper, navigator, bowman? In your mind, who's the one guy that can't make a mistake?
Tactician.
Okay.
Yep.
The rest of it takes care of itself. And if you don't understand weather, you don't.
Well, I don't think the rest of it takes care of itself. If the tactician does a good job and puts the boat in the right places, then everybody else, it's up to them to do their job. I don't think, like, the driver still has to drive the boat through the waves and the water, and the crew still has to hike, and the tacks still have to be good, and the bowman still has to do his job well. It's everybody is just as important as the guy beside them. Unfortunately, in sailing, though, when a mistake happens, you know whose fault it is pretty quick. But I think the tactician is obviously very important. He has a game plan in his head that he's trying to execute, and it's up to the rest of the team to help him do that. And the better we do our job, the easier his job is.
I don't want to continue to quote CLGP, but one of the things they talk about on the weekend in Chicago was the culture that the guys get along. And then language became an issue, because in terms of the Spanish boat, they had half the guys on the boat that spoke Spanish and the other guys spoke English, and there was interpretation problems. And it was, when you're going that fast and, the slightest mistake, a foil goes up too quick and all of a sudden the boat flies. It becomes an issue. So, but they talked about the competitiveness of culture more than necessarily understanding the boat. So they're bringing in guys that fit the message. And I think that's a part of it. And I think cruising sailors and sort of lower ranked amateurs could learn something from that process.
Yeah. I've been pretty lucky. My best friend, Brad Boston, we started sailing S2s and J24s together when we were kids, and here we are 38 years later, still sailing together on the same boats, and, for the most part of our other crews, I do obviously do a lot of sailing with Hooligan now and Trey Sheehan. We've been sailing together now, 10, 15 years, so the most of the, like our navigator I've been probably sailing with for 7 years, our trimmers I've been sailing with for 5, 6 years, and when we step outside that level, when we sailed the J111, I sailed with Rod Jabin on Ramrod, and, it's just all of us on the boat. We're all really good friends and competitors when we sailed for our 40s, and now we've just transitioned over to a J111. So even though we don't sail together all the time, we've known each other for 20 plus years, right? So the communication on the boat it's I don't want to say minimal, but we already know what each other's thinking,
Right.
So which makes it really easy. It makes, everything on the boat work happen, really smooth. So
You talk about Brad Boston being a part of your family, and we should point out that Brad's part of the Boston family, Boston Doyle Sailmakers up in Sarnia. So another world-class sailor, Spike and Tack and the rest of that family, they've been around sailing a long time. Does it enhance? You said you've been friends for life. Well, does it help having those kinds of friends rather than maybe somebody who was good at basketball or lacrosse or hockey or any other Canadian sport that people play? Having the proximity to people like that doesn't hurt either. Your ability.
Yeah. Obviously, when you're in the sport of sailing, it helps if your friends are sailors.
Right.
I do a lot of Viper sailing with Brad, and for a while, we were kind of getting accused of, bringing pro sailors into the class or doing, and it's like, oh, you guys don't understand. Like we're friends, I don't know if he'll admit that, but,
Right.
But we've been friends for a long time and we just want to go and have a good time and go sailing. Question though, I think, obviously at our level where we're sailing, we want to go out and sail as hard as we can, but we also want to go have a good time. And, we're sailing, with our friends, and if our friends are good sailors, then that makes it even better. So
I think the thread that kind of permeates through this sport is you can also be very competitive at a later age in life, at almost at a number of fleets, and that's not true in any other sport.
Pro sailors, for the most part, or any sailors, they do. Obviously, I think for cross training wise, you do have to do other sports. There's probably water involved, but I mean, I'm 53. I'm going to be 53 this year, and I get off the boat now, bumps, bruises, pretty sore, but I'm not gonna quit. I'm gonna keep, as long as people are willing to bring me sailing, I'm gonna keep pushing as hard as I can. So we keep talking about, the Rolex and these world championships, and, that was a little while ago, but.
So are you saying it's a sport? What have you done for me lately? Is that part of the process?
I don't think it's not so much what have you done for me lately. I think it's, I certainly appreciate what I've done in the sport, or, people who know you certainly appreciate what you've done. But, clearly there's, up and coming younger people, than me who could do the bow or the pointy end or other parts of the boats of sailing or whatever. But, yeah, it's good to be out on the water still. That's all I know.
One simple question. What is it you enjoy about, what is it you love about sailing?
I think the fact that through all these years and all the sailing that I've done and traveling, I'm still learning. It's every time, whether it's, at my age, whether it's something that I've forgotten and I've learned again, or something new that I've recently learned, or just a different way of doing things. But that's what keeps me intrigued. I find myself, I'm always learning when I get on the boat.
Curtis, is the learning process because the technology is changing, or because you're really learning more about the sailing aspect without the technology?
It's probably a bit of both.
Okay.
Technology has certainly gone through the roof in our sport. But yeah, I mean, just the sailing and the ability and things that I'm doing, being a bow guy for so long, I'm venturing off the bow now, and, on the 52, I do the pit. So I'm learning a whole different process there. But I think that it's really helpful, because being a bowman, moving to the pit, because I almost have to know what has to happen next up front. But also too, understanding, a little more of the electronic side, doing a little bit of driving now. So it's fun, I think, where I am now in sailing, I'm enjoying, the process that I've taken to get here, and it's a lot more enjoyable. And we're just, as we have a saying on the hooligan program, we have apps at 10, because we enjoy our time on the water, and we enjoy our time off the water. So by the time we get to dinner, from enjoying ourselves after having a good day of sailing, we finally get to dinner at about 10 o'clock at night. So
A lot of work.
I also think pro sailors almost, for the most part, I think they get a bad rap from like the common sailor, because you hear a lot of the times that pro sailors are wrecking the sport, because they are charging money, or they are doing this, or, we've heard it, as of recent, even in the tartan 10 class, when we go sail the North Americans, people are like, oh, you just bring your boat here with your pros and you go out and you beat everybody. And it's like, I mean, if it's happening at that level, surely it's happening, at other levels.
Right.
But you got to remember, for me, the only way I'm going to learn is if I'm sailing with people who are better than me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to learn off of somebody who's at the same level. We're going to have fun, but I'm not going to learn anything.
Right.
So I think people just need to remember that, for the sport to advance and to get better, there's got to be teachers along the way somewhere. It can't just be the guy in the back of the boat with the loudest voice, screaming at you, for you to learn better. You actually have to sail with people who know what they're talking about, know what they're doing, and be able to understand what they're teaching or saying to move forward.
Want to take the time to thank Curtis Florence for talking with us a little bit about pro racing, his involvement in Cleveland, and hopefully you'll see him along the trail here in other shows as we come up towards the rest of the season. So we'll be back in a second with our skippers from the Chicago Yacht Club race to Mackinac.
Talking with Dan Emery, who was a member of the St. Joseph Yacht Club and just completed the Chicago to Mackinac in what is arguably one of the more difficult races in terms of storms. There's been all kinds of stuff written. So Dan, first of all, thanks for taking the time. You're still on Mackinac, and Just talk a little bit about the race, because I think it was a little crazy as far as the weather.
Yeah, so we were in the cruising division, so we actually started on Friday afternoon. So we kind of got a head start out of Chicago. Real nice downwind winds for all of Friday and into Saturday. Friday night, we saw some thunderstorms on Friday night come through, but nothing too extreme. And then Saturday night, when the big line of storms came through, we were on the northern end of that. So we actually, most of the cruising fleet got lucky because being on the northern end of the storm line, we didn't get the brunt like the rest of the fleet did that started on Saturday. They caught the hard part of that storm line compared to us. We caught the northern edge of it. Still saw upwards to 50 knots during the storms, but not nearly as bad as what the racing fleet saw.
I obviously have to ask you the easiest question. What do you do in 50 knots besides hunker down?
You hunker down and you hang on and you hope that you got a lot of sea room to go downwind. And in this case, we needed to go downwind anyway. So you just kind of hang on and try to keep the boat under control. And if you can, you reduce sail. We have a roller furling headsail, so we just furl up the jib, and then we did take a reef in the main. So just kind of hang on until it kind of blows over. So.
Again, I know this is an obvious question, but you spend more time checking all of the parts and all of the shrouds and all the rest of it. Why it's going 50? You check the boat more than if it was a nice cruising day?
No, the boat's going to do what the boat's going to do. When you're doing 50 knots of breeze and you're hanging on, there's not much you're going to do to fix anything at that time or even check anything. If it goes, it goes, and you deal with it when it happens.
You guys were in the second cruising division. My question is that this year, like last year, one of the cruising boats got out in front of everybody. This year, White Hawk got out there by, I guess, 40 miles. I understand that everybody wants to finish at the island at the same time, but that hasn't necessarily happened the last couple of years. Do you think changing the cruising start would be appropriate? Did you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I kind of caught the end of it. I got a lag or something happened. So.
No, that's okay. I simply said I can cut this. What I was saying is that the cruising division and because let me start this question over because I'll edit this. The cruising division obviously was 40 miles out in front of everybody, and that's 2 years in a row. That was not typical in previous years. My question is it possible you think that there's a rethink on the start? Because you want everybody to be at the island at the same time, but the race is so spread out the last couple of years, and that's based on weather. I get that. But do you see a cruising division starting maybe a little later on Friday?
I don't know. I think a lot of the allure of the cruising division is to start Friday afternoon. I enjoy starting Friday afternoon and getting up here a little early. We got up here Sunday afternoon, which is great. We were able to actually enjoy the island and spend time with family and friends. So it was really cool. Last year we actually finished late Monday night with all the other racing division boats because the cruising class last year got caught up in the twos for all day Sunday and into Monday with no wind, while the whole racing division just made up all their time on us. And we were in the thick of it with everybody at that point. So, it comes and goes. Some years you get a fast race like this, other years you're stuck.
It's a fairly expensive race, for a one-off. And how do you come about? Is it the same crew? Have you had the same crew for forever?
For the last 2 years, I've had the same crew. We raced with 6, and so it's kind of a family affair. It's myself, it's my stepmom, friends of mine that have raced with us forever. So friends that I raced with when I lived in Toledo are on the boat, Dwayne Burgoyne and Tim Ostrander, and then friends of mine from Milwaukee, because we ran a family boat out of Milwaukee for quite a few years. So we have 2 crew that come out of Milwaukee that we've raced with forever. So yeah, it's for us, it's really a family affair. And next year I'm looking forward to the Mac. It'll be my 25th Mac. So I'll be an old goat next year. But I'm also bringing my 13-year-old son, Alec, will come with us next year, I think, for his first Mac. So it'll be kind of fun.
With the cost of the race, is this a expensive avocation?
Yeah, it's not cheap. Entry fees and sale costs and things like that. Hopefully you get through the race. Everybody's safe and sound, so that's the most important thing. I got a spinnaker that needs to be fixed. I got a halyard I got to run again because it cut. So things break. But that's part of owning the sailboat.
No, I get that part, but I'm curious. If this is just a wild question, but how many skippers pay the entire fee, do you think, and how many share the cost on the crew? I don't think I've ever asked that question before.
I think almost probably 100% of the skippers pay for the entry fee anyway on their own. Now, a lot of skippers will have share the cost with the crew for meals,
right?
And have every crew member bring a meal. For our crew, some of our crew brought some meals. Our crews, we try to share some stuff. One of my crew members got the race shirts this year. So when we bought shirts, he did all the work on getting the shirts together and got those. So, it's a group effort, but a lot of it does come to the skipper for financial reasons. And it's the skipper's name that goes on the trophy if you win it. So.
No, I get that. There was a guy on Whitehawk that has been done 67 max, which is,
Wow.
Obviously incredible. So my question to you is this vacation or obsession?
It's a little bit of both. It's a vacation for our family to come up to the island and spend 3 days up on the island. When I can get here on a Sunday afternoon for the race and spend the family time, it's definitely vacation. When I get up here Tuesday afternoon and go to the party and then leave the next day, it's more of an obsession point.
48 hours to get up there. How many hours does it take to get back?
It's probably going to be 3 days, I think. Our plan, the family and I are going to go to Beaver Island tomorrow. So we'll leave in the morning and get some diesel over in Mac City and then head over to Beaver Island, which is not too far away, and spend the night in Beaver Island. And then we'll start heading south. And I know my wife and kids need to get back down to St. Joe for some football camps that the boys have. So they're going to hop off in Leland and head south, and then I'll take the boat the rest of the way.
Dan, I appreciate your time. I just wanted to get us some insight on the cruising side of things. I think it's as competitive, but certainly a little more casual than some of the big boys that are in those 70s and 52s. But have a great sail back. Be safe, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. I do think it's just as competitive. A lot of the sailors I know in the cruising class are just as good as the racing sailors. It's just a different kind of boat. My boat has a roller furler with 2 headsails and an asymmetrical spinnaker. That's it. I don't have very many halyards and things like that. So that's kind of keeps the competition a little more level compared to some of the other guys that are running 10, 15 sails on their boat.
Well, Dan, I would assume that the flag that someone wins, whether you're on a 70 or whether you're on a 30, the flag value is all the same.
It definitely is. It's definitely a big reward to get on the podium for this race.
Cool. All right. Have a safe trip back and appreciate your time.
Okay. Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, guys, for stepping aboard. We're talking to John Demirs and Jeff Henderson. We're part of Jeff is the skipper of Pirate, which was, I think, 2nd place or 3rd place in the recent Chicago Yacht Club, Chicago to Mac race.
We were 2nd in class and 3rd overall.
3rd overall. I guess to start with is that it certainly was a whole lot different than the Port Huron and Mackinac race. You guys ran into some storms. Talk about the race itself.
Well, leaving Chicago, we thought we had lots of time and no problems to do, and turns out when we went to turn the motor on, our starter went out. So that was a major issue. So we got down, we took the starter apart, took the solenoid apart, and then we every time we wanted to start the boat during the race, we arced it with a screwdriver to start the motor. So it was quite a challenge. But even getting here, when we left after the Port Huron race, it was 8 to 10 footers out on Lake Michigan. So it was brutal to get down there.
John, we heard as much as in a storm's eye, there was as much as 50 knot winds. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. Yes.
What do you do on a 40 that you have? You have a 40 Benetel, am I correct?
Yeah, it's the Moorings 405. Yeah.
What do you do on a 40 Benetel when it's 50?
Hold on.
Okay.
As much as you can prepare ahead of time when you're monitoring weather conditions and so forth, you're going to reduce sail as much as you possibly can. Be proactive about it so that, when it does kick up like that, you're not overpowered.
This is 2 years in a row in the cruising division. The lead boat, in this case, White Hawk, goes up in winds by, I think, 35 miles, 38 miles. Last year, Eagle One wins by 50 miles.
Right.
Should the cruisers and the racers maybe start so far apart?
Well, as a logistical issue for Chicago, obviously they want to try to get everybody up here at the same time at the end. And I don't see any other way for them to do it other than what they do, to get everybody here at the same time.
What's your favorite?
It's different because we sail in different weather patterns than the rest of the fleet.
For example, ours was a complete downwind race, as far as spinnaker race all the way up the lake. Whereas the sport class that started yesterday, it was all a reach for every one of them.
When you're watching on Yellow Brick and you see that within the first hour, some of the 52s, WindQuest turns around, Mockingbird turns around. In both those cases, they had some boat issues. They didn't want to challenge into the heavier wind so that they'd have to end up, not making it. But does that give you pause at all when you're farther down the race course? When you see those kind of, I think there was 29 boats that turned back. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I thought it may even been more. I thought it was in the 30s the last time I looked, but we knew when we left Chicago, looking back at it, they were just getting hammered down there with the lightning. It was like a Tesla coil. I have never seen so many lightning strikes in one place in my entire life. It was just amazing. It really was.
This is Larry Harris.
Hey, Larry.
I was just telling the guys the last time I've seen this much lightning was July 18th in Harbor Springs. In Wequatanting, there was over 100 lightning strikes just concentrated in that area, which reminded me of what we saw on the race.
Larry, does lightning scare you the most of all on the boat? Of all the things
Well,
you can have?
I don't like it when it's going horizontal. We were hit by lightning in 1985, and Saginaw Bay, we're getting blown across the bay with no sails up, and it hit our leeward shrouds, and the lightning came down through the boat, and I basically put about 24 karat or caliber holes all across the water line. And then after the storm went through, it righted itself. You can see daylight all across the water line. So yes, that scares me. Horizontal lightning is to me the most dangerous for sailors.
Jeff, how many Max or how many Chicago Max? How many do you have total?
How many wins or how many races?
No. How many times you raced in the race?
Oh, I don't know. Chicago, I've never really tracked, but I'm sure it's probably around a dozen or so.
Yeah. Okay. How many Port Huron to Max?
48.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
29 for me.
John, how many for you?
23.
Okay. So 2 years from now, Jeff, you're going to do what Tom Meyer did from up at Little Traverse. You're going to be a Ram.
Pretty much. Yep. Sure am.
Point out
that happens to Centennial, the 100th running too.
Wow, that'll be a cool coincidence. Jeff, you've been involved a lot in the administration of racing and so certainly of yacht clubs, because you've obviously been with North Star and with DYRA and a variety of other organizations.
Yeah, you know what, the sport has given me so much in the past that I only feel it's my obligation to give back to the sport. And that's the only, I don't, there's other ways other people do it, and that's the only way I know how. So, I also got the Mackinac race declared a historical event. So that's why that historical marker's up in Port Huron and the one down at Bayview, because I got it made that historical event several years, right after I was Commodore at Bayview.
This is an unfair question, certainly to a Bayview, former Bayview Commodore. Chicago to Mac, Port Huron to Mac. What's your favorite, or what's the best race? Or is it apples and oranges?
You know what? They're both quality races, but Chicago makes it so hard for a contestant to come in and do the race. I mean, it's cost prohibitive. I mean, they just hammer you as an owner in so many different ways that it took a lot of fun out of it for me. I know that.
Okay. What's the cost to run that race?
Same price per boat, but by the time you get done spending all the money to do it, you're probably about $6,000 to do the
How much?
race. About $6,000.
$6,000. Wow. Okay. That's more than a hobby.
Just wanted to say thank you to all the folks who came aboard the show this week, and a hearty thank you. We got You Got a Regatta coming up this weekend. We'll have a second show out about the Chicago race, hopefully here in the next couple of days as we finish some interviews. We hope you enjoy for show 79 and all the guys in the back. My name is Greg Norman, and thanks for watching Inside Great Lakes Sailing. We'll see you next time.